In this lesson, we'll examine the three most common argument types on the GMAT. They are cause and effect, statistical, and analogy. Please note that there are other types of arguments, but these three are the most popular. Now, for each argument type, we'll examine its structure, its underlying assumptions, and ways to strengthen and weaken the conclusion. Doing so will help us answer a wide range of questions related to these argument types. Okay, let's begin with cause and effect arguments. Here we are typically told that two events occur together, and the author uses this information to conclude that one event must cause the other event. For example, in this argument we're told that a recent study reveals that the rate of obesity is higher among senior citizens who watch more than 8 hours of television per day than among senior citizens who watch fewer than 8 hours of television per day. Therefore, obesity among senior citizens is caused by watching more than 8 hours of television per day. So here we see that obesity and excessive television watching seem to occur together. From this information, the author concludes that one must cause the other. Now, the primary flaw in reasoning here is that the author has confused correlation with causation. Even though the two events may coincide, we cannot then conclude that one event causes the other event. So watch out for this common error where correlation is confused with causation. They are not the same thing. Now, for cause and effect arguments, the primary assumption is that X is the only possible cause of Y. So to weaken a cause and effect argument, we need to find alternatives to this assumption. One alternative is to demonstrate that something else causes Y. For example, in our television example, it might be the case that something else causes obesity. For example, eating too much could cause obesity. Another way to weaken a cause and effect argument is to show that it's actually Y that causes X. So in the example shown here, it could be the case that obesity causes the excessive television watching and not the other way around, as is suggested by the author. Finally, we can weaken a cause and effect argument by showing that the two events are simply coincidental. Now conversely, if we want to strengthen a cause and effect argument, we need to provide additional information that supports the causal effect, or we need to eliminate the possibility that something else causes the event. Okay, another popular argument type is the statistical argument. In these arguments, the author takes information from a sample and then makes a conclusion about an entire population from which the sample was taken. Here's an example. In a recent survey, participants at a Republicans-only dance competition were given a questionnaire. Most of the respondents indicated that they enjoyed singing. Therefore, it can be concluded that most Republicans are outgoing people. With statistical arguments, the primary assumption is that their sample is representative of the entire population. So to weaken a statistical argument, we need to demonstrate that the sample is not representative of the entire population. For example, is it reasonable to assume that the participants of a Republicans-only dance competition are representative of the entire population of Republicans? Probably not. In fact, it's likely that people who enter dance competitions are more outgoing than people who do not enter dance competitions. So here the sample probably is not representative of the entire population. Now, another way to weaken a statistical argument is to show that the conclusion does not match the statistics. In the example shown here, the question asks people whether they enjoy singing, but the conclusion is all about people being outgoing. Is it reasonable to conclude that people who enjoy singing are outgoing people? Not really. There are a lot of shy people out there who enjoy singing only in the privacy of their own homes. They may enjoy singing, but they are certainly not outgoing people. A third way to weaken a statistical argument is to show a flaw in the calculations. For example, it might be the case that the author has used questionable arithmetic to arrive at his or her statistics. Conversely, if we want to strengthen a statistical argument, we need to show that the sample is indeed representative of the entire population. Okay, the last argument type I'd like to discuss is the analogy argument. In these arguments, we are told that two entities share certain characteristics. Given this information, the author then concludes that the two entities must share additional characteristics. Here's an example of an analogy argument. Country X is a democratic tropical country with a population of 5 million, and country Y is a democratic tropical country with a population of 5 million. Since country X is experiencing widespread crop failures, country Y must be experiencing widespread crop failures as well. With analogy arguments, the primary assumption is that if two entities share some characteristics, then they must share all characteristics. So to weaken an analogy argument, we need to show that the two entities are less similar than initially suggested. For example, in the argument shown here, the conclusion would be weakened if we could show that the two countries have different crops, or that country Y has more advanced farming technology, or that country Y has soil that is more conducive to agriculture, and so on. By showing that the two countries are not that similar, we lessen the likelihood that country Y is experiencing crop failures. Conversely, to strengthen an analogy argument, we need to show that the two entities have additional similarities that make the conclusion more likely. So for this argument, if we can show that the two countries have similar crops, climate, soil, and farming technology, then the argument would be strengthened. Okay, let's summarize. In this lesson, we examined the three most common argument types on the GMAT. If you happen to recognize a certain argument type in a critical reasoning question, the information covered in this lesson may help you answer the question. So whenever you read a critical reasoning passage, always be on the lookout for these argument types.